46,739, 46,740, 46,741, 46,742, 46,743, 46,744, 46,745, 46,746, 46,747, 46,748, 46,749, 46,750, 4751, 4752, 4753, 4754, 4755, 4756, 4757, 4758, 4759, 4760, 4761, 4762, 4763, 46,764, 46,765, 46,766, 46,767, 46,768, 46,769, 46,770, 46,771, 46,772, 46,773, 46,774, 46,775, 46,776, 46,777, 46,778, 46,779, 46,784, 46,784, 46,785, 46,718, 4787, 4788, 4789, 4790, 4791, 4792, 4793, 4794, 4795, 4796, 4797, 4798, 4799, 46,800, 46,801, 46,802, 46,803, 46,804, 46,805, 46,806, 46,807, 46,808, 46,809, 46,810, 46,811, 46,812, 46,813, 46,814, 46,815, 46,816, 46,817, 46,818, 46,819, 46,820, 46,821, 46,822, 46,823, 46,824, 46,825, 46,826, 46,827, 46,828, 46,829, 46,830, 46,831, 46,832, 46,833, 46,834, 46,835, 46,836, 46,837, 46,838, 46,839, 46,840, 46,841, 46,842, 46,843, 46,844, 46,845, 46,846, 46,847, 46,848, 46,849, 46,850, 46,851, 46,852, 46,853, 46,854, 4, or 6,855, or 6,856, or 6,857, or 6,858, or 6,859, or 6,860, or 6,861, or 6,862, or 6,863, or 6,864, or 6,865, or 6,866, or 6,867, or 6,868, or 6,869, for 6,870, for 6,871, for 6,872, for 6,873, for 6,874, for 6,875, for 6,876, for 6,877, for 6,878, for 6,879, for 6,880, for 6,881, for 6,882, for 6,883, for 6,884, for 6,885, for 6,886, for 6,887, for 6,888, for 6,889, for 6,890, for 6,891, for 6,892, for 6,893, for 6,894, for 6,895, for 6,896, for 6,897, for 6,898, for 6,899, for 6,900, for 6,901, for 6,902, for 6,903, for 6,904, for 6,905, for 6,906, for 6,907, for 6,908, for 6,909, for 6,910, for 6,911, for 6,912, for 6,913, for 6,914, for 6,915, for 6,916, for 6,917, for 6,918, for 6,919, for 6,920, for 6,921, for 6,922, for 6,923, for 6,924, for 6,925, for 6,926, for 6,927, for 6,928, for 6,929, for 6,930, for 6,931, for 6,932, for 6,933, for 6,934, for 6,935, for 6,936, for 6,937, for 6,938, for 6,939, for 6,940, for 6,941, for 6,942, for 6,943, for 6,944, for 6,945, for 6,946, for 6,947, for 6,948, for 6,949, for 6,950, for 6,951, for 6,952, for 6,953, for 6,954, for 6,955, for 6,956, for 6,957, for 6,958, for 6,959, for 6,960, for 6,961, for 6,962, for 6,963, for 6,964, for 6,965, for 6,966, for 6,967, 46,968, 46,969, 46,970, 46,971, 46,972, 46,973, 46,974, 46,975, 46,976, 46,977, 46,978, 46,979, 46,980, 46,981, 46,982, 46,983, 46,984, 46,985, 46,986, 46,987, 46,988, 46,989, 46,990, 46,991, 46,992, 46,993, 46,994, 46,995, 46,996, 46,997, 46,998, 46,999, 46,999, 47,000. 47,001, 47,002, 47,003, 47,004, 47,005, 47,006, 47,007, 47,008, 47,009, 47,010, 47,011, 47,012, 47,013, 47,014, 47,015, 47,016, 47,017, 47,018, 47,019, 47,020, 47,021, 47,022, 47,023, 47,024, 47,025, 47,026, 47,027, 47,028, 47,029, 47,030, 47,031, 47,032, 47,033, 47,034, 47,035, 47,036, 47,037, 47,038, 47,039, 47,040, 47,041, 47,042, 47,043, 47,044, 47,045, 47,046, 47,047, 47,048, 47,049, 47,050. 47,051, 47,052, 47,053, 47,054, 47,055, 47,056, 47,057, 47,058, 47,059, 47,060, 47,061, 47,062, 47,063, 47,064, 47,065, 47,066, 47,067, 47,068, 47,069, 47,070, 47,071, 47,072, 47,073, 47,074, 47,075, 47,076, 47,077, 47,078, 47,079, 47,080, 47,081, 47,082, 47,083, 47,084, 47,085, 47,086, 47,087, 47,088, 47,089, oh God, 47,090, 47,091, 47,092, 47,093, 47,094, 47,095, 47,096, 47,097, 47,098, 47,099, 47,100, 47,101, 47,102, 47,103, 47,104, 47,105, 47,106, 47,107, 47,108, 47,109, 47,110, 47,111, 47,112, 47,113, 47,114, 47,115, 47,116, 47,117, 47,118, 47,119, 47,120, 47,121, 47,122, 47,123, 47,124, 47,125, 47,126, 47,127, 47,128, 47,129, 47,130, 47,131, 47,132, 47,133, 47,134, 47,135, 47,136, 47,137, 47,138, 47,139, 47,140, 47,141, 47,142, 47,143, 47,144, 47,145, 47,146, 47,147, 47,148, 47,149, 47,150, 47,151, 47,152, 47,153, 47,154, 47,155, 47,156, 47,157, 47,158, 47,159, 47,160, 47,161, 47,162, 47,163, 47,164, 47,165, 47,166, 47,167, 47,168, 47,169, 47,170, 47,171, 47,172, 47,173, 47,174, 47,175, 47,176, 47,177, 47,178, 47,179, 47,180, 47,181, 47,182, 47,183, 47,184, 47,185, 47,186, 47,187, 47,188, 47,189, 47,190, 47,191, 47,192, 47,193, 47,194, 47,195, 47,196, 47,197, 47,198, 47,199, 47,200, 47,201, 47,202, 47,203, 47,204, 47,205, 47,206, 47,207, 47,208, 47,209, 47,210, 47,211, 47,212, 47,213, 47,214, 47,215, 47,216, 47,217, 47,218, 47,219, 47,220, 47,221, 47,222, 47,223, 47,224, 47,225, 47,226, 47,227, 47,228, 47,229, 47,230, 47,231, 47,232, 47,233, 47,234, 47,235, 47,236, 47,237, 47,238, 47,239, 47,240, 47,241, 47,242, 47,243, 47,244, 47,245, 47,246, 47,247, 47,248, 47,249, 47,250, 47,251, 47,252, 47,253, 47,254, 47,255, 47,256, 47,257, 47,258, 47,259, 47,260, 47,261, 47,262, 47,263, 47,264, 47,265, 47,266, 47,267, 47,268, 47,269, 47,270, 47,271, 47,272, 47,273, 47,274, 47,275, 47,246, 47,247, 47,248, 47,249, 47,250, 47,251, 47,252, 47,253, 47,254, 47,255, 47,256, 47,257, 47,258, 47,259, 47,260, 47,261, 47,262, 47,263, 47,264, 47,265, 47,266, 47,267, 47,268, 47,269, 47,270, 47,271, 47,272, 47,273, 47,274, 47,275, 47,276, 47,247, 47,248, 47,249, 47,250, 47,251, 47,252, 47,253, 47,254, 47,255, 47,256, 47,257, 47,258, 47,259, 47,260, 47,261, 47,262, 47,263, 47,264, 47,265, 47,266, 47,267, 47,268, 47,269, 47,270, 47,271, 47,272, 47,273, 47,274, 47,275, 47,276, 47,277, 47,278, 47,279, 47,208, 47,281, 47,282, 47,283, 47,284, 47,285, 47,286, 47,287, 47,288, 47,289, 47,290, 47,291, 47,292, 47,293, 47,294, 47,295, 47,296, 47,297, 47,298, 47,299, 47,300, 47,301, 47,302, 47,303, 47,304, 47,305, 47,306, 47,307, 47,308, 47,309, 47,310, 47,311, 47,312, 47,313, 47,314, 47,315, 47,316, 47,317, 47,318, 47,319, 47,320, 47,321, 47,322, 47,323, 47,324, 47,325, 47,326, 47,327, 47,328, 47,329, 47,330, 47,331, 47,332, 47,333, 47,334, 47,335, 47,336, 47,337, 47,338, 47,339, 47,340, 47,341, 47,342, 47,343, 47,344, 47,345, 47,346, 47,347, 47,348, 47,349, 47,350, 47,300, 47,352, 47,353, 47,354, 47,355, 47,356, 47,357, 47,358, 47,359, 47,360, 47,361, 47,362, 47,363, 47,364, 47,365, 47,366, 47,367, 47,368, 47,369, 47,370, 47,371, 47,372, 47,373, 47,374, 47,375, excuse me, 47,376, 378, 376, 377, 378, 379, 7,380, 7,381, 7,382, 7,383, 7,384, 7,385, 7,386, 7,387, 7,388, 7,389, 7,390, 7,391, 7,392, 7,393, 7,394, 7,395, 7,396, 7,397, 7,398, 7,399, 7,400, 7,401, 7,402, 7,403, 7,404, 7,405, 7,406, 7,407, 7,408, 7,409, 7,410, 7,411, 7,412, 7,413, 7,414, 7,415, 7,416, 7,417, 7,418, 7,419, 7,420, 7,421, 7,422, 7,423, 7,424, 7,425, 7,426, 7,427, 7,428, 7,429, 7,430, 7,431, 7,432, 7,433, 7,434, 7,435, 7,436, 7,437, 7,438, 7,439, 7,440, 7,441, 7,442, 7,443, 7,444, 7,445, 7,446, 7,447, 7,448, 7,449, 7,450, 7,451, 7,452, 7,453, 7,454, 7,455, 7,456, 7,457, 7,458, 7,459, 7,460, 7,461, 7,462, 7,463, 7,464, 7,465, 7,466, 7,467, 7,468, 7,469, 7,470, 7,471, 7,472, 7,473, 7,474, 7,475, 7,476, 7,477, 7,478, 7,479, 7,480, 7,481, 7,482, 7,483, 7,484, 7,485, 7,486, 7,487, 7,488, 7,489, 7,490, 7,491, 7,492, 7,493, $47,494, $47,495, $47,496, $47,497, $47,498, $47,499, $47,500, $47,501, $47,502, $47,503, $47,504, $47,505, $47,506, $47,507, $47,508, $47,509, $47,510, $47,511, $47,512, $47,513, $47,514, $47,515, $47,516, $47,517, $47,518, $47,519, $47,520, $47,521, $47,522, $47,523, $47,524, $47,525, $47,526, $47,527, $47,528, $47,529, $47,530, $47,531, $47,532, $47,533, $47,534, $47,535, $47,536, $47,537, $47,538, $47,539, $47,540, $47,541, $47,542, $47,543, $47,544, $47,545, $47,546, $47,547, $47,548, $47,549, $47,550, $47,551, $47,552, $47,553, $47,554, $47,555, $47,556, $47,557, $47,558, $47,559, $47,560, $47,561, $47,562, $47,563, $47,564, $47,565, $47,566, $47,567, $47,568, $47,569, $47,570, $47,571, $47,572, $47,573, $47,574, $47,575, $47,576, $47,577, $47,578, $47,579, $47,580, $47,581, $47,582, $47,583, $47,584, $47,585, $47,586, $47,587, $47,588, $47,589, $47,590, $47,591, $47,592, $47,593, $47,594, $47,595, $47,596, $47,597, $47,598, $47,599, $47,600, $47,601, $47,602, $47,603, $47,604, $47,605, $47,606, $47,607, $47,608, $47,609, $47,610, $47,611, $47,612, $47,613, $47,614, $47,615, $47,616, $47,617, 47,618, 47,619, 47,620, 47,621, 47,622, 47,623, 47,624, 47,625, 47,626, 47,627, 47,628, 47,629, 47,630, 47,631, 47,632, 47,633, 47,634, 47,635, 47,636, 47,637, 47,638, 47,639, 47,640, 47,641, 47,642, 47,642, 47,644, 47,645, 47,646, 47,647, 47,648, 47,649, 47,670, 50, 47,651, 47,652, 47,653, 47,654, 47,655, 47,656, 47,657, 47,658, 47,659, 47,660, 47,661, 47,662, 47,663, 47,664, 47,665, 47,666, 47,667, 47,668, 47,669, 47,670, 47,671, 47,672, 47,673, 47,674, 47,675, 47,676, 47,677, 47,678, 47,649, 679, 47,680, 47,681, 47,682, 47,683, 47,684, 47,685, 47,686, 47,687, 47,688, 47,689, 47,690, 47,691, 47,692, 47,693, 47,694, 47,695, 47,696, 47,697, 47,698, 47,699, 47,700, 47,701, 47,702, 47,703, 47,704, 47,705, 47,706, 47,707, 47,708, 47,709, 47,710, 47,711, 47,712, 47,713, 47,714, 47,715, 47,716, 47,717, 47,718, 47,719, 47,720, 47,721, 47,722, 47,723, 47,724, 47,725, 47,726, 47,727, 47,728, 47,729, 47,730, 47,731, 47,732, 47,733, 47,734, 47,735, 47,736, 47,737, 47,738, 47,739, 47,740, 47,741, 47,742, 47,743, 47,744, 47,745, 47,746, 47,747, 47,748, 47,749, 47,750, 47,751, 47,752, 47,753, 47,754, 47,755, 47,756, 47,757, 47,758, 47,759, 47,760, 47,761, 47,762, 47,763, 47,764, 47,765, 47,766, 47,767, 47,768, 47,769, 47,770, 47,771, 47,772, 47,773, 47,744, 47,745, 47,746, 47,747, 47,748, 47,749, 47,750, 47,751, 47,752, 47,753, 47,754, 47,755, 47,756, 47,757, 47,758, 47,759, 769, 47,770, 47,771, 47,772, 47,773, 47,744, 47,745, 47,746, 47,747, 47,748, 47,749, 47,750, 780, 779, 47,780, 47,781, 47,782, 47,783, 47,784, 47,785, 47,786, 47,787, 47,788, 47,789, 47,790, 47,791, 47,792, 47,793, 47,794, 47,795, 47,796, 47,797, 47,798, 47,799, 47,800, 47,801, 47,802, 47,803, 47,804, 47,805, 47,806, 47,807, 47,808, 47,809, 47,810, 47,811, 47,812, 47,813, 47,814, 47,815, 47,816, 47,817, 47,818, 47,819, 47,820, 47,821, 47,822, 47,823, 47,824, 47,825. For 7,826, for 7,827, for 7,828, for 7,829, for 7,830, for 7,831, $47,832, $47,833, $47,834, $47,835, $47,836, $47,837, $47,838, $47,839, $47,840, $47,841, $47,842, $47,843, $47,844, $47,845, $47,846, $47,847, $47,848, $47,849, $47,850, $47,851, $47,852, $47,853, $47,854, $47,855, $47,856, $47,857, $47,858, $47,859, $47,860, $47,861, $47,862, $47,863, $47,864, $47,865, $47,866, $47,867, $47,868, $47,869, $47,870, $47,871, $47,872, $47,873, $47,874, $47,875, $47,876, $47,877, $47,878, $47,879, $47,880, $47,881, $47,882, $47,883, $47,884, $47,885, $47,886, $47,887, $47,888, $47,889, $47,890, $47,891, $47,892, $47,893, $47,894, $47,895, $47,896, $47,897, $47,898, $47,899, $47,900, $47,901, $47,902, $47,903, $47,904, $47,905, $47,906, $47,907, $47,908, $47,909, $47,910, $47,911, $47,912, $47,913, $47,914, $47,915, $47,916, $47,917, $47,918, $47,919, $47,920, $47,921, $47,922, $47,923, $47,924, $47,925, $47,925, $47,926, $47,927, $47,928, $47,929, $47,930, $47,931, $47,932, $47,933, $47,934, $47,934, $47,935, $47,936, $47,937, $47,938, $47,939, $47,940, $47,941, $47,942, $47,943, $47,944, $47,945, $47,946, $47,947, $47,948, $47,949, $47,950, $47,951, $47,952, $47,953, $47,954, $47,955, 47,956, 47,957, 47,958, 47,959, 47,960, 47,961, 47,962, 47,963, 47,964, 47,965, 47,966, 47,967, 47,968, 47,969, 47,970, 47,921, 47,922, 47,967, 47,968, 47,969, 47,970, 47,971, 47,972, 47,973, 47,974, 47,975, 47,946, 47,947, 47,948, 47,949, 47,940, 47,979, 47,980, 47,981, 47,982, 47,983, 47,984, 47,985, 47,986, 47,987, 47,988, 47,989, 47,990, 47,991, 47,992, 47,993, 47,994, 47,995, 47,996, 47,997, 47,998, 47,999, 48,000, 48,001, 48,002, 48,003, 48,004, 48,005, 48,006, 48,007, 48,008, 48,009, 48,010, 48,011, 48,012, 48,013, 48,014, 48,015, 48,016, 48,017, 48,018, 48,019, 48,020, 48,021, 48,022, 48,023, 48,024, 48,025, 48,026, 48,027, 48,028, 48,029, 48,030, 48,031, 48,032, 48,033, 48,034, 48,035, 48,036, 48,037, 48,038, 48,039, 48,040, 48,041, 48,042, 48,043, 48,044, 48,045, 48,046, 48,047, 48,048, 48,049, 48,050, 48,051, 48,052, 48,053, 48,054, 48,055, 48,056, 48,057, 48,058, 48,059, 48,060, 48,061, 48,062, 48,063, 48,064, 48,065, 48,066, 48,067, 48,068, 48,069, 48,070, 48,071, 48,072, 48,073, 48,074, 48,075, 48,076, 48,077, 48,078, 48,079, 48,080, 48,081, 48,082, 48,083, 48,084, 48,085, 48,086, 48,087, 48,088, 48,089, 48,090, 48,091, 48,092, 48,093, 48,094, 48,095, 48,096, 48,097, 48,098, 48,099, 48,100, 48,101, 48,102, 48,103, 48,104, 48,105, 48,106, 48,107, 48,108, 48,109, 48,110, 48,111, 48,112, 48,113, 48,114, 48,115, 48,116, 48,117, 48,118, 48,119, 48,120, 48,121, 48,122, 48,123, 48,124, 48,125, 48,126, 48,127, 48,128, 48,129, 48,130, 48,131, 48,132, 48,133, 48,134, 48,135, 48,136, 48,137, 48,138, 48,139, 48,140, 48,141, 48,142, 48,143, 48,144, 48,145, 48,146, 48,147, 48,148, 48,149, 48,150, 48,151, 48,152, 48,153, 48,154, 48,155, 48,156, 48,157, 48,158, 48,159, 48,160, 48,161, 48,162, 48,163, 48,164, 48,165, 48,166, 48,167, 48,168, 48,169, 48,170, 48,171, 48,172, 48,173, 48,174, 48,175, 48,176, 48,177, 48,178, 48,179, 48,180, 48,181, 48,182, 48,183, 48,184, 48,185, 48,186, 48,187, 48,188, 48,189, 48,190, 48,191, 48,192, 48,193, 48,194, 48,195, 48,196, 48,197, 48,198, 48,199, 48,200. 48,201, 48,202, 48,203, 48,204, 48,205, 48,206, 48,207, 48,208, 48,209, 48,210, 48,211, 48,212, 48,213, 48,214, 48,215, 48,216, 48,217, 48,218, 48,219, 48,220, 48,221, 48,222, 48,223, 48,224, 48,225, 48,226, 48,227, 48,228, 48,229, 48,230, 48,231, 48,230, 48,233, 48,234, 48,235, 48,236, 48,237, 48,238, 48,239, 48,240, 48,241, 48,242, 48,243, 48,244, 48,245, 48,246, 48,247, 48,248, 48,249, 48,250, 48,251, 48,252, 48,253, 48,254, 48,255, 48,256, 48,257, 48,258, 48,259, 48,260, 48,261, 48,262, 48,263, 48,264, 48,265, 48,266, 48,267, 48,268, 48,269, 48,270, 48,271, 48,272, 48,273, 48,274, 48,275, 48,275, 48,276, 48,277, 48,278, 48,279, 48,280, 48,281, 48,282, 48,283, 48,284, 48,285, 48,286, 48,287, 48,288, 48,289, 48,290, 48,291, 48,292, 48,293, 48,294, 48,295, 48,296, 48,297, 48,298, 48,299, 48,300, 48,301, 48,302, 48,303, 48,304, 48,305, 48,306, 48,307, 48,308, 48,309, 48,310, 48,311, 48,312, 48,313, 48,314, 48,315, 48,316, 48,317, 48,318, 48,319, 48,320, 48,321, 48,322, 48,323, 48,324, 48,325, 48,326, 48,387, 48,388, 48,389, 48,385, 48,386, 48,387, 48,388, 48,389, 48,390, 48,391, 48,392, 48,393, 48,394, 48,395, 48,396, 48,397, 48,398, 48,399, 48,400, 48,401, 48,402, 48,403, 48,404, 48,405, 48,406, 48,407, 48,408, 48,409, 48,410, 48,411, 48,412, 48,413, 48,414, 48,415, 48,416, 48,417, 48,418, 48,419, 48,420, 48,421, 48,422, 48,423, 48,424, 48,425, 48,426, 48,427, 48,428, 48,429, 48,408, 48,431, 48,432, 48,433, 48,434, 48,435, 48,436, 48,437, 48,438, 48,439, 48,440, 48,441, 48,442, 48,443, 48,444, 48,445, 48,446, 48,447, 48,448, 48,449, 48,450, 48,451, 48,452, 48,453, 48,454, 48,455, 48,456, 48,457, 48,458, 48,459, 48,460, 48,461, 48,462, 48,463, 48,464, 48,465, 48,466, 48,467, 48,468, 48,469, 48,470, 48,471, 48,472, 48,473, 48,474, 48,475, 48,476, 48,477, 48,478, 48,479, 48,480, 48,481, 48,482, 48,483, 48,484, 48,485, 48,486, 48,487, 48,488, 48,489, 48,490, 48,491, 48,492, 48,493, 48,494, 48,495, 48,496, 48,497, 48,498, 48,499, 48,500, 48,501, 48,502, 48,503, 48,504, 48,505, 48,506, 48,507, 48,508, 48,509, 48,510, 48,511, 48,512, 48,513, 48,514, 48,515, 48,516, 48,517, 48,518, 48,519, 48,520, 48,521, 48,522, 48,523, 48,524, 48,525, 48,526, 48,527, 48,528, 48,529, 48,530, 48,531, 48,532, 48,583, 48,584, 48,535, 48,536, 48,537, 48,538, 48,539, 48,540, 48,541, 48,542, 48,543, 48,544, 48,545, 48,546, 48,547, 48,548, 48,549, 48,550, 48,551, 48,552, 48,553, 48,554, 48,555, 48,556, 48,557, 48,558, 48,559, 48,560, 48,561, 48,562, 48,563, 48,564, 48,565, 48,566, 48,567, 48,568, 48,569, 48,570, 48,571, 48,572, 48,573, 48,574, 48,575, 48,576, 48,577, 48,578, 48,579, 48,580, 48,581, 48,582, 48,583, 48,584, 48,585, 48,586, 48,587, 48,588, 48,589, 48,590, 48,591, 48,592, 48,593, 48,594, 48,595, 48,596, 48,597, 48,598, 48,599, 48,600, 48,601, 48,602, 48,603, 48,604, 48,605, 48,606, 48,607, 48,608, 48,609, 48,610, 48,611, 48,612, 48,613, 48,614, 48,615, 48,616, 48,617, 48,618, 48,619, 48,620, 48,621, 48,622, 48,623, 48,624, 48,625, 48,626, 48,627, 48,628, 48,629, 48,630, 48,631, 48,632, 48,633, 48,634, 48,635, 48,636, 48,637, 48,638, 48,639, 48,640, 48,641, 48,642, 48,643, 48,644, 48,645, 48,646, 48,647, 48,648, 48,649, 48,650, 48,651, 48,652, 48,653, 48,654, 48,655, 48,656, 48,657, 48,658, 48,659, 48,660, 48,661, 48,662, 48,663, 48,664, 48,665, 48,666, 48,667, 48,668, 48,669, 48,670, 48,671, 48,672, 48,673, 48,674, 48,675, 48,676, 48,677, 48,678, 48,679, 48,680, 48,681, 48,682, 48,683, 48,684, 48,685, 48,686, 48,687, 48,688, 48,689, 48,690, 48,691, 48,692, 48,693, 48,694, 48,695, 48,696, 48,697, 48,698, 48,699, 48,700, 48,701, 48,702, 48,703, 48,704, 48,705, 48,706, 48,707, 48,708, 48,709, 48,710, 48,711, 48,712, 48,713, 48,714, 48,715, 48,716, 48,717, 48,718, 48,719, 48,720, 48,721, 48,722, 48,723, 48,724, 48,725, 48,726, 48,727, 48,728, 48,729, 48,730, 48,731, 48,732, 48,733, 48,734, 48,735, 48,736, 48,737, 48,738, 48,739, 48,740, 48,741, 48,742, 48,743, 48,744, 48,745, 48,746, 48,747, 48,748, 48,749, 48,750, 48,751, 48,752, 48,753, 48,754, 48,755, 48,756, 48,757, 48,758, 48,759, 48,760, 48,761, 48,762, 48,763, 48,764, 48,765, 48,766, 48,767, 48,768, 48,769, 48,770, 48,771, 48,772, 48,773, 48,774, 48,775, 48,776, 48,777, 48,778, 48,779, 48,780, 48,781, 48,782, 48,783, 48,784, 48,785, 48,786, 48,787, 48,788, 48,789, 48,790, 48,791, 48,792, 48,793, 48,794, 48,795, 48,796, 48,797, 48,798, 48,799, 48,800, 48,801, 48,802, 48,803, 48,804, 48,805, 48,806, 48,807, 48,808, 48,809, 48,810, 48,811, 48,812, 48,813, 48,814, 48,815, 48,816, 48,817, 48,818, 48,819, 48,820, 48,800. It's off it though. Off it before I back my ball. 48,820, 48,821, 48,822, 48,823, 48,824, 48,825, 48,826, 48,827, 48,828, 48,829, 48,830, 48,831, 48,832, 48,833, 48,834, 48,835, 48,836, 48,837, 48,838, 48,839, 48,840, 48,841, 48,842, 48,843, 48,844, 48,845, 48,846, 48,847, 48,848, 48,849, 48,850, 48,851, 48,852, 48,853, 48,854, 48,855, 48,856, 48,857, 48,858, 48,859, 48,860, 48,861, 48,862, 48,863, 48,864, 48,865, 48,866, 48,867, 48,868, 48,869, 48,000. No, 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 not working. Just leave it. 48,869, 48,870, 48,871, 48,872, 48,873, 48,874, light, 48,875, light, 48,000, fridge. You just make me talk inside my video anyhow. 48,871, 48,872, 48,873, 48,874, 48,875, 48,876, 48,877, 48,878, 48,879, 48,880, 48,881, 48,882, 48,883, 48,884, 48,885, 48,886, 48,887, 48,888, 48,889, 48,890, 48,891. Şimdi bakın sound. 48,892, 48,893, 48,894, 48,895, 48,896, 48,897, 48,898, 48,899, 48,900, 48,901, 48,902, 48,903, 48,904, 48,905, 48,906, 48,907, 48,908, 48,909, 48,910, 48,911, 48,912, 48,913, 48,914, 48,915, 48,916, 48,917, 48,918, 48,919, 48,920, 48,921, 48,922, 48,923, 48,924, 48,925, 48,926, 48,927, 48,928, 48,929, 48,930, 48,931, 48,932, 48,933, 48,934, 48,935, 48,936, 48,937, 48,938, 48,939, 48,940, 48,941, 48,942, 48,943, 48,944, 48,945, 48,946, 48,947, 48,948, 48,949, 48,950, 48,951, 48,952, 48,953, 48,954, 48,955, 48,956, 48,957, 48,958, 48,959, 48,960, 48,961, 48,962, 48,963, 48,964, 48,965, 48,966, 48,967, 48,968, 48,969, 48,970, 48,971, 48,972, 48,973, 48,974, 48,975, 48,976, 48,977, 48,978, 48,979, 48,980, 48,981, 48,982, 48,983, 48,984, 48,985, 48,986, 48,987, 48,988, 48,989, 48,990, 48,991, 48,992, 48,993, 48,994, 48,995, 48,996, 48,997, 48,998, 48,999, 49,000, 49,001, 49,002, 49,003, 49,004, 49,005, 49,006, 49,007, 49,008, 49,009, 49,010, 49,011, 49,012, 49,013, 49,014, 49,015, 49,016, 49,017, 49,018, 49,019, 49,020, 49,021, 49,022, 49,023, 49,024, 49,025, 49,026, 49,027, 49,028, 49,029, 49,030, 49,031, 49,032, 49,033, 49,034, 49,035, 49,036, 49,037, 49,038, 49,039, 49,040, 49,041, 49,042, 49,043, 49,044, 49,045, 49,046, 49,047, 49,048, 49,049, 49,050, 49,051, 49,052, 49,053, 49,054, 49,055, 49,056, 49,057, 49,058, 49,059, 49,060, 49,061, 49,062, 49,063, 49,064, 49,065, 49,066, 49,067, 49,068, 49,069, 49,070, 49,071, 49,072, 49,073, 49,074, 49,075, 49,076, 49,077, 49,078, 49,079, 49,080, 49,081, 49,082, 49,083, 49,084, 49,085, 49,086, 49,087, 49,088, 49,089, 49,090, 49,091, 49,092, 49,093, 49,094, 49,095, 49,096, 49,097, 49,098, 49,099, 49,100, 49,101, 49,102, 49,103, 49,104, 49,105, 49,106, 49,107, 49,108, 49,109, 49,110, 49,111, 49,112, 49,113, 49,114, 49,115, 49,116, 49,117, 49,118, 49,119, 49,120, 49,121, 49,122, 49,123, 49,124, 49,125, 49,126, 49,127, 49,128, 49,129, 49,130, 49,131, 49,132, 49,133, 49,134, 49,135, 49,136, 49,137, 49,138, 49,139, 49,150, 49,151, 49,152, 49,153, 49,154, 49,155, 49,156, 49,157, 49,158, 49,159, 49,160, 49,161, 49,162, 49,163, 49,164, 49,165, 49,166, 49,167, 49,168, 49,169, 49,170, 49,171, 49,172, 49,173, 49,174, 49,175, 49,176, 49,177, 49,178, 49,179, 49,108, 49,181, 49,182, 49,183, 49,184, 49,185, 49,186, 49,187, 49,188, 49,189, 49,190, 49,191, 49,192, 49,193, 49,194, 49,195, 49,196, 49,197, 49,198, 49,199, 49,000. 49,198, 49,199, 49,200, 49,201, 49,202, 49,203, 49,204, 49,205, 49,206, 49,207, 49,208, 49,209, 49,210, 49,211, 49,212, 49,213, 49,214, 49,215, 49,216, 49,217, 49,218, 49,219, 49,220, 49,221, 49,222, 49,223, 49,224, 49,225, 49,226, 49,227, 49,228, 49,229, 49,230, 49,231, 49,232, 49,233, 49,234, 49,235, 49,236, 49,237, 49,238, 49,239, 49,204, 49,241, 49,242, 49,243, 49,244, 49,245, 49,246, 49,247, 49,248, 49,249, 49,250, 49,251, 49,252, 49,253, 49,254, 49,255, 49,256, 49,257, 49,258, 49,259, 49,260, 49,261, 49,262, 49,263, 49,264, 49,265, 49,266, 49,267, 49,268, 49,269, 49,270, 49,271, 49,272, 49,273, 49,274, 49,275, 49,276, 49,277, 49,278, 49,279, 49,280, 49,281, 49,282, 49,283, 49,284, 49,285, 49,286, 49,287, 49,288, 49,289, 49,290, 49,291, 49,292, 49,293, 49,294, 49,295, 49,296, 49,297, 49,298, 49,299, 49,299, 49,300, 49,301, 49,302, 49,303, 49,304, 49,305, 49,306, 49,307, 49,308, 49,309, 49,310, 49,311, 49,312, 49,313, 49,314, 49,315, 49,316, 49,317, 49,318, 49,319, 49,320, 49,321, 49,322, 49,323, 49,324, 49,325, 49,326, 49,327, 49,328, 49,329, 49,330, 49,331, 49,332, 49,333, 49,334, 49,335, 49,336, 49,337, 49,338, 49,339, 49,340, 49,341, 49,342, 49,343, 49,344, 49,345, 49,346, 49,347, 49,348, 49,349, 49,350, 49,351, 49,352, 49,353, 49,354, 49,355, 49,356, 49,357, 49,358, 49,359, 49,360, 49,361, 49,362, 49,363, 49,364, 49,365, 49,366, 49,367, 49,368, 49,369, 49,370, 49,371, 49,372, 49,373, 49,374, 49,375, 49,376, 49,377, 49,378, 49,379, 49,279, 49,380, 49,381, 49,381, 49,382, 49,383, 49,384, 49,385, 49,386, 49,387, 49,388, 49,389, 49,390, 49,391, 49,392, 49,393, 49,394, 49,395, 49,396, 49,397, 49,398, 49,399, 49,400, 49,401, 49,402, 49,403, 49,404, 49,405, 49,406, 49,407, 49,408, 49,409, 49,410, 49,411, 49,412, 49,413, 49,414, 49,415, 49,416, 49,417, 49,418, 49,419, 49,420, 49,421, 49,422, 49,423, 49,424, 49,425, 49,426, 49,427, 49,428, 49,429, 49,430, 49,431, 49,432, 49,433, 49,434, 49,436, 49,446, 49,447, 49,448, 49,449, 49,450, 49,451, 49,452, 49,453, 49,454, 49,455, 49,456, 49,457, 49,458, 49,459, 49,460, 49,461, 49,462, 49,463, 49,464, 49,465, 49,466, 49,467, 49,468, 49,469, 49,470, 49,471, 49,472, 49,473, 49,474, 49,475, 49,476, 49,477, 49,478, 49,479, 49,408, 49,481, 49,482, 49,483, 49,484, 49,485, 49,486, 49,487, 49,488, 49,489, 49,490, 49,491, 49,492, 49,493, 49,494, 49,495, 49,496, 49,497, 49,498, 49,499, 49,500, 49,501, 49,502, 49,503, 49,504, 49,505, 49,506, 49,507, 49,508, 49,509, 49,510, 49,511, 49,512, 49,513, 49,514, 49,515, 49,516, 49,517, 49,518, 49,519, 49,520, 49,521, 49,522, 49,523, 49,524, 49,525, 49,526, 49,527, 49,528, 49,529, 49,530, 49,531, 49,532, 49,533, 49,534, 49,535, 49,536, 49,537, 49,538, 49,539, 49,540, 49,541, 49,542, 49,543, 49,544, 49,545, 49,546, 49,547, 49,548, 49,549, 49,550, 49,551, 49,552, 49,553, 49,554, 49,555, 49,556, 49,557, 49,558, 49,559, 49,560, 49,561, 49,562, 49,563, 49,564, 49,565, 49,566, 49,567, 49,568, 49,569, 49,570, 49,571, 49,572, 49,573, 49,574, 49,575, 49,576, 49,577, 49,578, 49,579, 49,579, 49,518, 49,581, 49,582, 49,581, 49,582, 49,583, 49,584, 49,585, 49,586, 49,587, 49,588, 49,589, 49,590, 49,591, 49,592, 49,593, 49,594, 49,595, 49,596, 49,597, 49,598, 49,599, 49,600, 49,601, 49,602, 49,603, 49,604, 49,605, 49,606, 49,607, 49,608, 49,609, 49,610, 49,611, 49,612, 49,613, 49,614, 49,615, 49,616, 49,617, 49,618, 49,619, 49,620, 49,621, 49,622, 49,623, 49,624, 49,625, 49,626, 49,627, 49,628, 49,629, 49,630, 49,631, 49,632, 49,633, 49,634, 49,635, 49,636, 49,637, 49,638, 49,639, 49,640, 49,641, 49,000 as in two of them as a whole. Then the here again. 49,631, 49,632, 49,633. Where yagachada black market the water middle kwa hushi. 49,639, 49,640, 49,641, 49,642, 49,643, 49,644, 49,645, 49,646, 49,647, 49,648, 49,649, 49,650, 49,651, 49,652, 49,653, 49,654, 49,655, 49,656, 49,657, 49,668, 49,669, 49,670, 49,671, 49,672, 49,673, 49,673, 49,674, 49,675, 49,676, 49,677, 49,678, 49,679, 49,680. 49,681, 49,682, 49,683, 49,684, 49,685, 49,686, 49,687, 49,688, 49,689, 49,690, 49,691, 49,692, 49,693, 49,694, 49,695, 49,696, 49,697, 49,698, 49,699, 49,700, 49,701, 49,702, 49,703, 49,704, 49,705, 49,706, 49,707, 49,708, 49,709, 49,710, 49,711, 49,712, 49,713, 49,714, 49,715, 49,716, 49,717, 49,718, 49,719, 49,720, 49,721, 49,722, 49,723, 49,724, 49,725, 49,726, 49,727, 49,728, 49,729, 49,730, 49,731, 49,732, 49,733, 49,744, 49,745, 49,746, 49,747, 49,748, 49,749, 49,750, 49,751, 49,752, 49,753, 49,754, 49,755, 49,756, 49,757, 49,758, 49,759, 49,760, 49,761, 49,762, 49,763, 49,764, 49,765, 49,766, 49,767, 49,768, 49,769, 49,770, 49,771, 49,772, 49,773, 49,774, 49,745, 49,746, 776, 49,777, 49,778, 49,779, 49,700. Baik udah aku toilet 49,779, 49,708, 49,781, 49,782, 49,783, 49,784, 49,785, 49,786, 49,787, 49,788, 49,789, 49,790, 49,791, 49,792, 49,793, 49,794, 49,795, 49,796, 49,797, 49,798, 49,799, 49,799, 49,800, 49,801, 49,802, 49,803, 49,804, 49,805, 49,806, 49,807, 49,808, 49,809, 49,810, 49,811, 49,812, 49,813, 49,814, 49,815, 49,816, 49,817, 49,818, 49,819, 49,820, 49,821, 49,822, 49,823, 49,824, 49,825, 49,826, 826, 49,827, 49,828, 49,829, 49,830, 49,831, 49,832, 49,833, 49,834, 49,835, 49,836, 49,837, 49,838, 49,839, 49,840, 49,841, 49,842, 49,843, 49,844, 49,845, 49,846, 49,847, 49,848, 49,849, 49,850, 49,851, 49,852, 49,853, 49,854, 49,855, 49,856, 49,857, 49,858, 49,859, 49,860, 49,861, 49,862, 49,863, 49,864, 49,865, 49,866, 49,867, 49,868, 49,869, 49,870, 49,871, 49,872, 49,873, 49,874, 49,875, 49,876, 49,877, 49,878, 49,879, 49,880, 49,881, 49,882, 49,883, 49,884, 49,885, 49,886, 49,887, 49,888, 49,889, 49,890, 49,891, 49,892, 49,893, 49,894, 49,895, 49,896, 49,897, 49,898, 49,899, 49,900, 49,901, 49,902, 49,903, 49,904, 49,905, 49,906, 49,907, 49,908, 49,909, 49,910, 49,911, 49,912, 49,913, 49,914, 49,915, 49,916, 49,917, 49,918, 49,919, 49,920, 49,921, 49,922, 49,923, 49,924, 49,925, 49,926, 49,927, 49,928, 49,929, 49,930, 49,931, 49,932, 49,933, 49,934, 49,935, 49,936, 49,937, 49,938, 49,939, 49,940, 49,941, 49,942, 49,943, 49,944, 49,945, 49,946, 49,947, 49,948, 49,949, 49,950, 49,951, 49,952, 49,953, 49,954, 49,955, 49,956, 49,957, 49,958, 49,959, 49,960, 49,961, 49,962, 49,963, 49,964, 49,965, 49,966, 49,967, 49,968, 49,969, 49,970, 49,971, 49,972, 49,973, 49,974, 49,975, 49,976, 49,977, 49,978, 49,979, 49,980, 49,981, 49,982, 49,983, 49,984, 49,985, 49,986, 49,987, 49,988, 49,989, 49,990, 49,991, 49,992, 49,993, 49,994, 49,995, 49,996, 49,997, 49,998, was 9,999. 50,000. Okay, everyone. I want to appreciate you all for your time. Thank you for encouragement. Thank you for counting with me. So here we're gonna call it a day. Let's call it a day here and continue tomorrow morning. Thank you, and God bless you. Have a good night's rest and see you tomorrow morning. Bye.